And what we see is the volume of threats are going up, threats coming in every possible language, in areas where language or size was enough of a deterrent for threat actors to pursue enterprises. Now, whether a customer is in Japan or Middle East, they're going to get attacked the same way as if the customer is in English, because language is no longer a barrier.
Sumit Dhawan is the CEO at Proofpoint, taking time out of a busy schedule, no doubt, here at RSAC in San Francisco to join us here at the New York Stock Exchange. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
Well, good morning, JD, and thanks for having me.
Proofpoint protects 85% of Fortune 100 companies. In and of itself, that's an incredible statistic. Sumit, what is one vulnerability that even Fortune 100 companies may underestimate?
You know, I think everyone thinks when they think about security, there's a bunch of people sitting and detecting stuff that's going on and recovering from it in case something bad happens. But at the end of the day, if you look at all the research, large majority of threats coming through people. Okay, it's people who get socially engineered threats, and they're coming in from what we think of as phishing or business compromise or fraud, and that trend keeps going up. You know, just 5 years ago, we all know we've seen these threats that would come in the form of an email where we could tell, reading it, that this looks like someone who didn't know me or the language who wrote it. Not anymore. Okay, with the advent of the new AI-centric tools, creating more sophisticated threats and running them in volume for everyone is here, and it's here to stay forever, and that's what we focus on. We call it human-centric security at Proofpoint. That's what we serve for 485 out of Fortune 100.
There's no doubt that the world of cybersecurity threats continues to evolve, but so does the regulatory landscape. How are you balancing innovation with the increasing patchwork of global compliance regulations?
You know, compliance is usually handled in terms of bare minimum, okay? So we think of compliance as providing the tool set for enterprises to be successful in meeting the requirements, but not stopping there. Because compliance is usually making sure that people handle the data properly for privacy purposes, or in certain cases just for data security purposes. So we provide the right set of solutions for this to handle the bare minimum compliance. But what we see when it comes to compliance these days, the rules are outdated. They're not sufficient to really protect the enterprises. If you think about it, when the compliance rules were often written, they were written when Zoom didn't exist, when new forms of communications, call it WhatsApp or Signal, didn't exist. Now you need to handle all forms of communications and have the right degree of governance on it. So I always encourage enterprise customers that I'm speaking with, don't just look at the letter of the law when you're thinking of compliance. Just think about a hygiene of the right degree of governance for all of your communications and data, which is again a human-centric problem and a key capability we provide as part of our platform.
AI-fueled threats are without a doubt on the rise, whether we're talking synthetic attacks or things like deepfakes. How are you and the team at Proofpoint aiming to stay one step ahead of how bad actors are leveraging artificial intelligence?
You know, with cybersecurity, this is one industry which has always used fairly sophisticated set of models. I'm just going to call them models because there is debate on what's AI and what's not AI, and a lot of people say that there's overuse of the word AI. But Proofpoint has always been built on fairly sophisticated, say, machine learning models, which are detecting the patterns. And based on the patterns, it's basically assessing is good communications or is it potential threat that has to be condemned. And with the advent of AI, what we've had to do is evolve and innovate and build new generative AI models. In other words, now with our language models, we can detect the intent behind something that's coming to you. And if we detect the intent that's just spurious, we condemn it. Okay, so that's the evolution of the technology now. We call it Nexus. This is sort of this ensemble of very sophisticated models that keep improving. And what we see is the volume of threats are going up, threats coming in every possible language, in areas where language or size was enough of a deterrent for threat actors to pursue enterprises. Now, whether a customer is in Japan or Middle East, they're going to get attacked the same way as if the customer is in English, because language is no longer a barrier for threat actors. So our language models, which are far more than semantic models, are able to work across all languages and detect the intent for all of these communications and condemn the threats if we see that these are spurious attacks.
If you could wave a magic wand and magically fix one challenge, one pain point for the cybersecurity industry, what would it be?
You know, I think the one challenge that exists in this industry is complexity and fragmentation. The industry has been brought up by technical practitioners who like buying and using tools to solve pain points. In our viewpoint, there are 3 runtime cybersecurity stacks that formulate a cybersecurity architecture. There is something that is there for defense and response, which is, like I mentioned at the start of the conversation, there are people who need to detect and respond if something bad happens. There is a last line of defense, used to be firewall, now people work from everywhere, so it's called SASE, or your edge that's protecting, and that's your perimeter or your last line of defense. And then there is preventive solution, which is human-centric, because all the preventive stuff has to be done at human level, which is where we play in. So I always encourage CISOs to think about a cybersecurity architecture with these 3 major components and rely on best-in-class solutions for these 3 things and make sure they work together. That's a magic wand I keep waving every day.
That's a great response, and I can't help but notice as we're having this conversation, you use the phrase people-centric security often. What is one mistake that you see a lot of companies make when it comes to assessing the human risk component of all of this?
You know, people, usually cybersecurity professionals come from a technology background, which is necessary, okay, or they have risk background. So usually they're either conversant with rules and compliance or frameworks for making sure risk is good, or technology. Both of them are necessary skills. Okay, the human aspect is something that needs to be added for most CISOs, and that's changing. Most CISOs I'm speaking with now, they're saying, you know, the human risk and human resiliency for an ongoing potential threats is a necessary defense for potentially what may happen. So for example, now with our solutions, our customers tell us, give more emphasis on not just old school training. Because think about it, used to be you see a bunch of videos, and now supposedly you're trained. Not when you are being attacked by very sophisticated, socially engineered threats coming in. So you really have to put people in a gaming mechanism with some sort of set of simulations that really match what the real world threat looks like. And that's what we have done. We just recently announced a solution called Prime, where we integrated these individual components which were defending against threats, as well as building human resiliency together. Based on what the threats are and who they are coming for, someone with a one click can automate as if that threat would go in, what would have happened. Now it's really real world scenarios that are training people with gaming and simulations. And that's something that CISOs are gradually adding as a dimension in addition to risk and technology, which again reinforces the need for thinking about human-centric and human resiliency.
Yeah. There's no doubt that the Teshin deal brings AI even deeper into Proofpoint's stack. How do you go about evaluating true AI innovation from AI hype?
There's a lot of AI hype. Okay, there is a lot of AI hype, and we have to be super careful at this point in time. We speak with a lot of technology players in the smaller startup arena because we realize we're not going to build all of the innovations in-house. So we're always assessing that Tessin and then another acquisition we did last year, Normalize, were these best-in-class creme de la creme we acquired. One was to bring the power of inbound threat defense, as in threats are coming in. We were hearing from customers that, hey, I need the same level of protection, the sophistication that the largest enterprises, the 85 out of Fortune 100 are getting. I need that too, even if I have 85 people or 8,500 people, okay? So with Tessin, we were able to bring a technology that integrates with a single click with Microsoft. We announced a partnership with Microsoft, we acquired Tessin, we plugged them together with all the sophisticated AI models we have, and voila, now they get the best-in-class protection available to everyone. One click, they have it available. They don't need sophisticated security teams that enterprises usually have, who need a bunch of knobs and capabilities that we already provide. Same thing with Normalize. You know, if customers are adopting AI, We have AI and agentic technology, just best in class. We just announced that as well. Our agents go find all the data in the enterprise, classify it, and then set up your data protection rules with simple click. This is the mechanism how we are democratizing the access of human-centric security to everyone.
Sumit Dhawan is the CEO at Proofpoint. Very grateful for your time here in San Francisco. Congratulations on all the success for you and your colleagues at the company, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and I'm excited now than I've ever been. Thank you.